might talk about the navigation component. So, how many of you have played with the navigation component right now? Okay, some of you. Did you like it? Did you try it when it was in alpha? Okay. Yeah. Oh, I have 5 minutes. We'll try to be able to have my screen all the time. So, and now it's not working anymore. And my clicker is already dead. Oh no, okay. Starting again. Take number 2. So, my name is Laurence de Villers. I'm working at Transit Up. We also have the dog team on Transit, if you didn't know. So all my psych are dog right now for fun, but yeah. I'm also a GDG Montreal lead organizer. I'm also Women in Tech Currently, so I organize a lot of events about women in tech and also about Android and technology. And I'm involved with the Google Developer Group for the past 4 years. And now I'm helping other Google Developer Group in Canada to try to grow or at least to reach and create new meetups all around the country. So it's a bit of my personal biography there. So what is the navigation component? It's a new way of showing and defining all the navigation in the application. So it was created by Google like a year ago, year and a half, and it was, the main purpose of it is navigation is complex. And usually when you use Fragment and things like that, you have a lot of things to think about. You need to think about the backslash, recreate screen, and think all of those things. And it's a little bit complicated, so the navigation graph tried to simplify everything of it, and you have like the contextual way of seeing where your application is supposed to go. All the link will show you which screens go to next, the other screens, and you cannot navigate outside of the graph. So at least it's a little bit simpler, but yeah. So how it simplifies common navigation patterns. So usually you have an activity, a Fragment Manager. Every time you want to put a fragment, you need to pass by the Fragment Manager to create a fragment transaction that will record what transaction between which fragment the other was created. And if you want to go back, you need to remove those fragments and things like that. And if you want to pop from like 3, 4 screen, you need to do specific flag and other stuff. So at the beginning, a little bit of Android, there was like 2 fights. The person that was like, oh, we create an application with all activities, so next screen is an activity. And the other group of people were like, we create an activity and a lot of fragments. So you change fragment and things like that. But the main point of people that didn't want it to do an activity and fragments was because the navigation is complex with fragments, and you need to think a lot about the Fragment Manager and to handle all those things. There is also like the pop inclusive, how to come back and remove all the screens that was earlier at a certain point that you need like to dynamically create the code for it. Yeah. There is also the principle of up button versus back button. How many of you know the difference between those two? A little bit? So the up button is the button that is on the navigation. So here, this one, and the back button is the system back of your phone. So there is a principle that the back button should do the back of all your chronology navigation. So if you go to a screen, another, and you say back, it will recreate all the screen that you navigate before and do the reverse of your navigation. The up button is really specific of what your system is supposed to do. So if you go to a menu and you click on the screen and come back, you will not have the chronological way, but this will be more the relationship between each screen. So you need to handle those actually for now before the navigation component. So every time you have an option item selected, you can say, oh, I want to backpress and things like that on some screens, or they introduce on-support navigation up at a certain point of time to try to help people with the up button navigation, because it was not that obvious. So yeah, there's kind of this problem right now with the navigation. So what is the first principle of a navigation? It's super simple. You have an entry point. And with a graph, you can see how easy this is the entry point of the application. And after that, it's all screens that go up the other screens. And if you click back on this one, it will close the application. So it's simplified a little bit. And if you didn't understand, they create like a graph. So it's an XML files that also have a visual part. So you can add all the logic of your navigation. So you specify what is the layout and the ID of the navigation for the screen and different action and things like that. And it's more like a map of what the application should do and how they should navigate between them. But it doesn't contain the screen, so at least it's more easier. And it's XML, so it's not like iOS when there is a conflict, you can understand what was generated with the super graph. Now we can understand because it's super easy XML file. So navigation component take care of the fragment managers and the backstacks, so you don't need to think about it. You can specify some rule and super easy to do. And also the Deeplink, so it's super interesting and easier to do navigation in the application. So how can we get started to use the navigation component? You need to add some library in your Gradle files. And now we're in the version 2.1, so at least it's getting pretty stable. At the beginning with the alpha last year, every method was changing all the time, and you implement a part of navigation, and after that you come back and it doesn't work anymore because the method doesn't exist, it was renamed to another thing. But now at least it's 2.0, so it's getting better and more stable, but we're still in the early stage of the navigation component. Also, you need to create the navigation graph that is an XML. So you add like a resource and you find navigation, and it will create on your resource path the navigation XML, like you can see on it. And after that, you add all your fragments that you have in the application, and you create new one. If you have already fragment in your application and you're kind of migrating from a project, you will all see the fragment in the search bar, and it will propose every fragment, so you can just take and drag to the graph. And a super good thing is graph can be, if you have a lot of navigation, it can be complex to understand all the paths. You can group and do some nested graph. So at least you can regroup some logic in some nested graph that can open to another graph. So it's more easy to read than, like, I don't know, 15 or more screens that have linked together. That is kind of crazy. So it helps you to do that. After that, on your main activity, you need to add a fragment that will be a navigation host. So this fragment will take a little bit of the logic of replacing all the other fragment at this place. on your screen. And you need to specify if it is the default host. Why? Because you can have an application that have more than one activity, and one activity that every time you have an activity, you may have more fragment in another nav host navigation. So you specify which one is the first one, and if you open the other one, it can communicate to each other. Yeah. So how it's working. So as I say, we have a fragment that is a nav host fragment. And you have the activity and like your navigation, your up button or a bottom navigation, and you can have a slide. But the nav host navigation will all do the logic for your fragment, like for switching fragment. So how can we navigate between fragments? There is a superclass that is nav controller, and it will tell the nav host fragment to change fragment on it. So you have like navigate up, back stack to a certain fragment, and it's kind of super cool as a method because if you put an ID that is on your graph but it's an activity, and you are coming from a fragment and activity, it will automatically detect that this ID is an activity and like create start activity by itself. If you try to still keep start activity and things like that in your application, it will not work. When you migrate to the navigation graph, everything is like managed by the graph. So you need to use nav controller to navigate between screens. So this is a little bit a simple example with the nav controller that is here that we get from a click. We retrieve the nav controller with the view, and we navigate to the fragment that is here. So this is the link. On the link, you can click on it, and you have the information of what is my ID for this navigation. So every arrow that you have a specific ID, and you can specify animation, other stuff on it. And it's super important that to take this ID and navigate with it. So now you don't need to create like replace fragment and things like that. You just call this method and say, oh, this is my action, so I will go to that screen. So yeah, why I have to do that? Yeah. The back button is a system one and will be automatically handled by the navigation graph. The navigation hub button, you need to do some work on it to make it work and to have like the same logic of automatically creating the arrow or not, depending in which state, if it's the second string, the main screen, and things like that. So how do you set up the navigation bar? You need to retrieve the navigation host fragment, and after that, you need to configure with an app builder, an app bar configuration builder, the top level of your application. So if here I have my burger menu, all applications that are in my menu here are in the same level. So I don't want them to have an arrow to say back and things like that. So I need to specify those screens, those fragments is on the same level, and they are the starting kind of point. You still have the first navigation fragment that will be the first one that is opened by the application, but at least they will know that they need to keep the menu burger, and you don't need to undo that. So you create all like the top level destination, you pass it as an argument, and after that, like the navigation on the top is handled by you. Also, if you want to do like the navigation view, that is like the menu that pop up on the left, my right, on the right. Anyways, you need to add them there is a specific material navigation view, and you add in on your application. And after that, if you want to do like the same logic of navigation with the graph, you only need to have the same ID in your menu then that is on the graph. So if I have like my fragment on the navigation XML, that is nav program, in my menu I need to have the same action that is nav program. And magically, the navigation component will create the matching, and when you click on every button, it will navigate to the good screen. So that's pretty nice. So you can remove all those code by just having the same name. And what a thing that is cool in the XML, if you can specify what will be the name of the action bar. So you say Android label, and they will take this label as the name of the action bar when you navigate. So yeah, all the screen, all those code, you remove it, you have less code in your code. It's super nice to have navigation. And yeah. You need also to set up the navigation view to make sure that they will be able to use the graph. So there's some little code like this that you say, this is my navigation view, this is my nav controller, and set up with it in Simplifier. And you need to handle the navigation up bypassing the same configuration, the app bar configuration that was like the main level of your fragment. So it's all the ID that is on the same level, you pass it on that way, and automatically you don't need to handle the menu anymore. It's the nav graph that will do it. Okay, so this is super good, but I didn't like show you how to pass argument on a navigation component. So how can we do that? Like, I know it's obvious, but so it's super simple. You can use bundle to pass it. So you have your ID that was defined on the nav graph, and you can create your bundle with extra and say, oh, I want to pass a tag to my other screen. This is so obvious. Like, we do that for every open a new fragment, pass a bundle. Bundle is everywhere. But did you ever try to use another way than bundle? Sometimes it's complicated to know which key I need to use for this screen specifically, and with this destination, because you can have many entry points to the same screen, but not the same parameter, and can be a little bit complex. So then Google introduced the type safe argument passing. What is safe argument? Actually, it's a library, it's a plugin that Google add with a navigation component that will generate for you some classes that specify really the relationship that you want, the object that you need to be passed by a destination to the other screen. I'm not super clear, but yeah, I will get to that a little bit. So, by example, this is yeah. You can add in the navigation, I don't know, can you see the screen or not? Yeah, okay, I will explain a little bit more the screen because I hate that I need to move, sorry. So, on the arrow, you can specify on the destination screen, you can specify which argument you want to receive. And it will generate on the action also a direct link, so a direction with those arguments, and it will create some class by itself. So, and a good, yeah. I want to talk about this after, but anyways. You can pass directly some classes that are extended for parsable or serializable. So this is a nice way of parsing argument. You don't need to say this is a serial thing and I need to cast it after that. You can already pass the model, and you will need to create and pass a talk and nothing else when you will implement it. So how to try to explain something that is super dynamically generated? I will try my best. So the plugin generates a class that is a current fragment that you want to do the direction to the other one. So with Jaro, you have like fragment F to fragment B. So if here it will be fragment A directions, and on this class, it will generate an action that will be action fragment A to fragment B with the object I created in my graph, that is talk. And you will be obligated to pass a talk if you want to send an argument to the next screen. Is it a little bit clear or not? So yeah, so in that way it's like program, directions, action to program to talk fragment. I cannot pass anything else than a talk here. And after that I just say, hey, show my next string and navigate with the action. Then the actions know the direction and where to go. It's like the arrow part in the graph, so it knows that it needs to go to the next screen, so I don't need to recreate and everything and find the ID of this action. It's already there with the action nav program talk. So yeah, this was kind of the old way of sending an information, and you don't need that anymore. You will be obligated to pass a talk if you specify one. So, how can I retrieve my safe argument that was passed to my view? So you need to take the class that was generated. It's like my talk fragment, that is my fragment B, slash plus arg. So yeah, but it's always like that. You find it will generate automatically all your classes. So if you specify an argument on a specific fragment, it's like fragment arg dot, and you will have the list of all the arguments that you specify in the navigation graph. So you can go and say fragment arg from bundle, the bundle you receive in your create activity and everything. Get talk, so it's already cast in the talk. It's not, you don't need to cast it anymore, and make sure that it's the good value, and you can use it. So it's more simpler. It's pretty good in English, thank you. I need to take classes. So what are the pro? It's super easy, like passing parameters and knowing which parameter by direction, because it's always per direction that you will have your argument. And you don't need to cast, you can pass enum and other stuff directly. But the cons is that you need to make sure that in ProGuard, you reveal all the classes that you pass. That's a little bit bad, because if you pass a lot of argument, you need to remove them or make sure that they will not obfuscate those classes, because otherwise they will not be able to create the classes on your production build, and they will not find those classes. So it's kind of, yeah, I think it's super bad, but maybe they will fix it in a way. Another nice thing with the navigation component is how to handle animation transitions. So you can do it directly on the graph and specify some XML of animation directly here. So this is on the action, on the arrow here. You specify, hey, when I enter, I want to fade up to anims, and it will automatically create the animations for you, but you need to specify. There is default animation that you can select, but you can create some XML animation for it and specify for every direction and action which animation you want to. Also, if you're a big fan of super custom create animation and things like that, you can still override on create animator and do your animation. It will work, so it doesn't break anything, but it's simplified the way of before you needed to go on the Fragment Manager and make sure your animation pass between two fragments. Now you can specify all in the graph. Also, you can share elements with the other fragment. There is some code here. You can add extra, navigator extra, that are the view that you want to pass to the other animation of the view. So you can like have a square that go up between two screens and do something like that. So it simplifies the animation. And simplify also the deep link. So if you have a deep link to the items, actually you need to handle manually the stack and say, oh, I will recreate this screen category that is between, because otherwise I will break all the navigation of the user and they will be lost in the application. And with the navigation component, they do it manually for you. So there is two kind of deep link. If it's an explicit one, it will recreate all the stack, and usually the explicit is when you get a notification, a widget, or app shortcut that opens your applications, and it will automatically recreate all the path to the screen that you needed, so you can go back and feel like the real navigation. And there's always also an implicit deep link that is more like URLs and things like that you coming from the web or other URL thing. And this thing will not recreate the navigation. They will just keep your navigation and add the fragment on the top of it. If you want that you recreate everything, you need to add a flag on your intent when you create. So an explicit deep link, there is, like if you do a navigation or the stuff, you need always a pending intent to specify some action and things like that. If you want to use it and it will be generated by the graph, you need to use nav Deeplink builder, and it will and set the graph that you're navigate on, and which is the destination. It will create automatically all the path and everything when you relaunch the application from this deep link. And if you have access to the navigation controller, you can simplify, just create the deep link and do the same thing and pass it to the notification or the widget and things like that. The implicit deep link, you need to do a little bit more work. It's a little bit more, there are like two lines of code, but anyways. So you need to add in the manifest the nav graph, so it can, at the build, generate all the intent filters that the application needs to be able to handle URL. I'm not good to pronounce that. URL. And you need to specify also in the graph, the navigation graph, what is the deep link for that screen. So you can add like in XML or in the graph directly what is the deep link for that screen. And with both of them, it will generate all the logic for entering the application with this specific URL and things like that. So what is the difference between the 1.0 version and the 2? There is some stuff that changed. If you search for documentation, you will all get some example of the first version, and they are not good anymore. Even though the documentation right now, there is some code that say you should do that, and it will not work because those methods doesn't exist anymore. So it's really nice. So a simple example, you need to pass with the navigation UI, navigation up, and pass a bar configuration instead of just navigation up with a bar configuration. That was one of my mistakes. I searched a lot to know what replaced this method, because all the documentation, do a navigation up, but it doesn't work. You need to pass with the navigation UI and pass it with a find view controller that will pass the navigation configuration. Also, there is the app configuration that say you just need to set up action bar with a navigation and app configuration. And now you need to pass by the builder, so you need to know that there is a builder. The documentation is not that clear for that. And there is new method. You can create a navigation on click listener. You can also bind some view model to exchange data between two screens directly in the navigation graph. You can also add dialogue in your graph, so you can navigate to certain dialogue within your graph. So this is the new thing. And you can navigate with a Deeplink or URL. Yeah, at least you understand what I'm trying to say. And yeah, do you have any question about the navigation component? I didn't talk about all the stuff. There is a lot of stuff. Like if you want to do your own custom navigation with Vue, you can implement, like extend the navigation and create your own with it and to use with Vue. And yeah, it's a little bit more stable now. I try and play with it with an old app that is simple, but it was working well. And I talk about the navigation view, but you can generate the same thing with the navigation bottom view with the menu, like the same principle of linking to ID with the graph and menu works for any kind of menu. So do you have any questions? Thank you.